Welcome back to my channel, Dane Does Things. In this video, I'll be describing the parts of a custom keyboard, what they do, and why they are important. We're starting off with the case. Now we're kind of cheating because this is the Lego case from KBD Craft Kit Atom, and I'm using it because it's Lego. It was easy to take this keyboard apart. All the cases are the skeleton of the board. They hold everything together. They're also all made of different materials. For example, this is obviously plastic, but this board here is aluminum. I would say that plastic and aluminum are some of the most common materials that cases are made out of, but there's also things like other types of metal. Wood is really nice. I've even seen a couple of bamboo ones. Those are really, really nice. Each case carries a different sound as well. For example, this Lego case seems to be very poppy and marbly. It has like a higher pitch than other cases that I have. And I say that just because it seems no matter what switch I put in this board, it all sounds fairly similar and consistent. But this board right here has a very deep sound profile just because of how hollow it is. As well, because it's plastic, it allows the sound from the switch and the board to just kind of reverberate, and it's really like echoey almost. It sounds really, really good. And the next parts here all go together. We have the PCB, foam, the plate, and the stabilizers. The first of these is the PCB. Now you'll have to excuse me, I have the tape mod on this, but this is basically the brain of the board. It communicates with the computer and it reads the input from the switches. And we will get to what the switch is and what it does. Just be patient, please. In my opinion, PCBs are all kind of the same. They don't really make a difference to sound or anything like that. Just some are better made, some are cheaper. This one's a bit cheaper. I have some nicer ones as well. They all do the same thing. The next part of the board is the foam. If you get a kit, like this was a kit, most, if not all kits come with this type of foam. And this goes in between the PCB and the plate. The main and basically only function of the foam on the PCB is just to help dampen the sound of the switch a little bit, so it gives it a bit more of a deeper sound and just isn't so pingy and metallic from it banging off of that. Now this is not an essential part of a keyboard. Some people don't like foam in their boards. They like that raw sound that everything has, and that's totally fine. It's all up to preference. I personally love foam. I put as much foam as I can in a board as well. There is also foam that you can put in the bottom of the case, just called case foam. Like this board right here, I have a ton of foam in it. I have foam under the PCB. I have foam on top of the PCB, just to help dampen the sound a little bit, because that's just personally what I like. The last part of this section is the stabilizer. Now this goes with the bigger keycaps. It makes sure that when you press on one side of the keycap, it doesn't topple over, anything like that. And these ones here, I have tuned and I have lubed, and that basically just means that when I press on them, it's not going to rattle, and I would explain how to do that, but I'm still really new. I'm not too great at it. And there are a bunch of other videos on YouTube that do it really, really well. So just look up on how to tune, how to lube your stabilizers. You'll find some great videos. The next part of the build that we're going to is everybody's favorite and probably the most common mod in a keyboard, the switches. Changing your switches is going to be, it's going to be the easiest way to change the sound and feel of your board. Now this is assuming that you bought a PCB that is hot swappable, which is something I forgot to mention before. If you're just starting out or do not know how to solder, make sure to buy a board with a hot swappable PCB. This allows you to just pull out the switches without desoldering anything. It takes a long time. You can mess up your PCB. It's a whole 9 yards. If you know how to and you want to, that's great. It opens up some more options to you. I personally don't know how to solder yet, and there's a board that I really, really want, but it is solderable and I don't like the switches in it. So I haven't done it yet. I haven't built that board yet because I just am not ready for it, and that's okay. But make sure, if you're new, get yourself a PCB that's hot swappable. It's very important. Now there are 3 kinds of switches: linear switches, tactile switches, and quickie switches. Linear switches are just like a smooth up and down, just like a trigger on a controller. Tactiles have like a bump. I don't know if you can see that or not. Versus this, smooth up and down. This one has a bump. It's like a button almost. And then quickies are like buttons, except there's a loud click. And I personally don't like quickies, but everybody has a personal preference. I would say that linear switches are the most common switch. Like Gatoron Reds are really common as well. For these, MX Browns are usually where people start. They're not very good, but they are tactile. And for quickies, Gatoron Blues are very, very, very common, especially in gaming keyboards, which is where I started out. Every switch is different as well. They all have different spring weights, which is how hard it is to press down. Like these ones are very, very light and very easy. This one is a little bit heavier, and I have some that are really, really heavy to press down. They're really good for typing, not so good for gaming when you have to hold something down for a long period of time. Some also have a higher or lower sound pitch. It can be pingier, they can sound more metallic. These ones are pretty poppy. These ones, a little bit higher pitch, kind of ticky, you hear that? Every switch is completely different. And the sound and feel of a switch will also change quite a bit if it is lubed or unlubed. And some switches come pre-lubed from the factory. Usually it's just a little bit. You can still add on to it. You can even kind of take it off. A lot of switches come unlubed from the factory. These ones came lightly lubed. These ones came lightly lubed. I had some that came completely unlubed. I lubed them myself, and they sound much, much deeper, much smoother, quieter, softer. It changes quite a bit. Usually it gives you a smoother experience because the parts that go up and down have some lubrication now. It's not quite as scratchy. And if it's requested, I can make a video on how to lube switches, or at least how I do it. There are a ton of great videos online about how to do it, so I'm not going to go into it because I won't explain as well. I learned from a YouTube video, and now I do it the way that that person did. The next part is the plate of the board. Now this is a polycarbonate plate, but there are many different types. They're made from a lot of different materials. It all affects the sound and feel of the keyboard. The most common materials for a plate are polycarbonate, brass, aluminum, sometimes stainless steel, and even carbon fiber. Polycarbonate is basically just plastic and is the most common kind of plate. It's the most flexible as well and gives the most feedback when you're typing. It gives like a deeper, more muted sound to the board. And then we move on to the other types. Brass, aluminum, steel, they all have a much higher, pingier sound to them because it's metal. You know, if you tap on metal, it's going to sound kind of pingy. Now, I don't know a whole lot on the sounds of them because I'm not a huge fan of any type of aluminum, brass, whatever. I'm not a huge fan of the metal plates personally, just because I like a big, deep sound to my keyboards, and those give a higher pitch feedback from the switches. So I'm not sure which type of metal sounds which way, but I do know how carbon fiber plates sound, and they're like in between of polycarbonate and metal plates, I think. It's like a deeper ping and like not quite as dull as polycarbonate, but definitely not as sharp as metal. I kind of like it. It's nice. It's a nice hybrid. And finally, we come to the keycaps. Now, keycaps just come down to preference. There are many different keycap profiles. There are many different colors, obviously. They all have different heights, angles, thicknesses. Everything is just personal preference. Especially when you're starting out, get a couple of different profiles. These are cherry profiles. This is a cherry profile. This is flatter. This is a DSA profile, I believe. Much more flat, a little bit indent for the finger, but not too much. Whereas the cherry has quite a bit of indent for your fingers to be on. It all comes down to preference. And that is that. Please let me know if I got any of this information wrong, and be sure to comment your favorite builds and what you've done to your board. And be sure to click that like button, and subscribing is greatly appreciated as well. Until next time, this is Dane Does Things. See ya.